Good morning, Ram Nation. We are back with another edition of DNVR Rams Live. As always, I am your host, Justin Michael. We're one day away from the showdown, the first in Fort Collins since 1996. I have a column that's going to come out later today. I meant to get this out yesterday, but obviously the Pac-12 news kind of put a little bit of a wrench in the whole forecast, the whole plan for the day. But I truly think this is the biggest CSU game of my lifetime. I think you'd have to go back to 94 to find games that had greater stakes going into the matchup. If you play the results game, obviously, beating CU in 2002, that was huge. And the 2014 win, I think, was massive as well. I mean, opening up against Oregon State, there have been big moments, don't get me wrong, but primetime audience on CBS, 5:30, 48 hours after announcing you're moving to the Pac-12, which, by the way, that's just a happy little coincidence that the Pac-12 release happened to coincide with the showdown week. I asked Weber and Parsons about that, and they were like, obviously, we're happy about that, but no, that wasn't like a strategic decision or anything like that. I am in this opening segment going to talk about what I learned from my conversation with CSU President Amy Parsons and Athletic Director John Weber. Really appreciate that they took time. I mean, they had a really busy day, obviously. I hopped on the phone with me for like 10 minutes, just gave me some insight into how this whole process played out, what it means to them as alums to be able to facilitate this historic move. Make sure you go check it out because I wrote over 1,200 words on it on the website with much more detail. But a couple of bullet points here before we get to my interview with former Colorado State starting center Jake Bennett, actually the last all-conference offensive lineman that CSU signed and developed out of high school, which is crazy. But Jake is a good friend of mine. We grew up together. We graduated from high school together, obviously went to CSU. And if you've listened to the show for a long time, you know that actually my path here, I owe a lot of it to Jake. He's a big part of what got me a job on the football team before I got to campus. He was always great to me at the end of his career when I was beginning in student media. And, I'm just really grateful for him, for everything he's done and for coming on and having some fun with me. It was a great interview. We have good chemistry, and I think you guys are going to enjoy that quite a bit. But as far as some things that I learned from Amy Parsons and John Weber go, they will be joining the pack as full members, which is huge. It means they get equal shares. It means they have equal voting power when it comes to the future media rights deal and future expansion decisions. They are, as they said to me, getting in on the ground floor of the new Pac-12, which is really, really exciting. And I'm not going to, do the whole, I understand that we did the whole spiel yesterday where we point out that, it's not the Pac-12 that it once was, but, I think if you're going to be cynical like that and be a pessimist, I think you could say the same thing about the current Big 12. Is the current Big 12 really the Big 12 without Texas, without Oklahoma, without Nebraska, without A&M? Conferences are always in flux. And the reality is this is a step up in the right direction. And while it may not be the difference between going from like CSU to the Big 12 of 2014 or the Big 10 or something like that, it's clearly a step in the right direction. The brands that they are associated with are good athletic programs. They're similar in size. And honestly, like, this is a move that's bigger than just sports. It's about the entire perception of CSU as a university. There's going to be opportunities from a research standpoint to, team up with some of these schools. And it's just great. I'm stoked about the future. Make sure you go check out that article. I really appreciate everybody in the Toyota chat. Good morning to all of you Ram fans out there. Obviously, it's going to be a fun weekend. I'll make sure you're paying attention this weekend. We'll have all kinds of content. I'm going live post-game. It'll start roughly around 10 p.m.-ish, maybe before, maybe after. That'll all be dependent on how long the post-game process takes. And, typically when they win, it takes a little bit longer. So for your guys' sake, I think a later show would probably be a good thing. But we'll see what happens there. Getting back on track with some of the things I learned from Parsons and Weber. Again, it's about more than sports. Weber and Parsons really talked about how CSU has really been investing in athletics for a long time. And basically, like, you're banking on the future of these brands that you're associated with, these other 5 schools, and the Pac-12 brand being more relevant and being the better bet to hitch your wagon to in the long run than the Mountain West. And I don't think you can really argue that. I mean, I understand there are some downsides. You lose some affiliations and some relationships with schools that, go back to the late 60s with the original WAC, or even further back in some cases like Wyoming. I mean, you've been in the same league here for 100 years. And I understand it's bittersweet to have that change. What is encouraging is it's not just something they said in the release. Weber told me they have made contact with Wyoming. Their AD, Tom Berman, there is a mutual interest on both sides to keep the border war alive. And that's so great, because I was pretty worried about it. It wouldn't surprise me if Wyoming took this situation and decided to be petty. But I mean, in doing so, they'd only be penalizing themselves by losing their most important game. But to me, this is my favorite rivalry in all sports. I love the showdown, and seeing it in Fort Collins this weekend, it's going to be absolutely electric. But there's a uniqueness to the border war and the relationships between Fort Collins and Laramie. And I don't know, I'm excited that at least, from what they're saying, publicly, it's not going to be an issue. We're going to be able to continue one of the oldest rivalries in college football. And, as Eric says here in the Toyota chat, I'm just glad we won't have to play at empty stadiums like San Jose State, New Mexico, Nevada. That's the thing. And, some of those programs, they have good other sports. New Mexico basketball is obviously awesome. Their track program is phenomenal. Nevada hoops is the real deal, but these decisions are driven by football. It's a football driven world. And, that's just kind of where we're at. And, the bottom line is, by trimming some of this fat, I think you have a more valuable conference. And honestly, like, while I would be disappointed, and there's no guarantee that like schools like New Mexico, couldn't end up being in the mix down the line. Same thing with like UNLV. It sounds like there's some politics involved that it could get tricky to try and split up Nevada and UNLV, very similarly to what happened with Arizona and Arizona State, because I don't think ASU even wanted to leave the Pac-12, but U of A was going. Politicians get involved, so you got to stick together. And that ends up happening. Would have been kind of cool if we would have had politicians stick up for CSU that way. Maybe we could have been in a power conference a little bit sooner. But I will say, I think the right schools made it. I think it's a very bright future, and I think this is big for CSU's brand. In terms of some other things that I've been asked, no, there are no plans at this time to add other sports. Obviously, the Pac-12, a big baseball conference historically, there's a lot of money that goes into doing something like that. And, with Title IX, it gets even more complicated. You'd have to add multiple sports. But right now, the focus is essentially to build the league. They got to get to 8 before 2026. And it's to get a media rights deal. And one of the things that I've read from some experts, I follow this process, but I'm certainly not an expert when it comes to media rights and, all the legalities and stuff that go into that, all the nuance of the process. What it sounds like is the Pac-12 is going to market at a really good time, not necessarily because they're the most desirable brand in college athletics, but because they're really going to be the only brand on the market at that time. And sometimes the timing is more important than anything. It's also encouraging that you're going to have multiple suitors. I talked about this yesterday, but I think Apple could be in play. Any streaming, really. I mean, Amazon, Peacock, we're seeing all of those streamers dip into sports, but I also think, there's a possibility that somebody like TNT could get involved. They've already invested a bunch in Big East basketball. Turner has a deal with the Mountain West right now. I got to imagine, long term, they'd rather have Boise State, CSU, San Diego State than New Mexico, Nevada, Wyoming. And I don't mean that as a shot, but I just think the future of this Pac-12 is, the ceiling is very clearly higher. And why I was just a little bit surprised by some of the pessimism, I guess. I mean, that's anything these days. Some people will find a way to complain about winning the lottery. The taxes are so high. That they are, I guess. Would you rather not win? That would be my argument in those situations. How would you feel if you were UNLV right now? That's why I think this whole thing is silly, because when you look at the situation, San Diego State, Boise State, they've been trying to get out for a decade. They almost left for the Big East in 2012 or 13 or whatever that was. San Diego State did leave, got into the Pac-12 for like 13 hours or whatever before that whole thing fell apart. You could afford to stay in a Mountain West that lost Utah, that lost BYU, that lost TCU, because you were able to add enough from the WAC to stabilize. You were able to bring over Boise and Fresno and Utah State, all solid programs. But the minute you're sitting here in a Mountain West that no longer has Utah or BYU, that no longer has TCU, and very likely was about to no longer have Boise State, San Diego State for much longer, you had to be in that mix. And I get that there's a bittersweet element to that. I get that there's some relationships that go out the window, and that's tough. But they had to do what was best for CSU, and what was best for CSU was to go into this revamped Pac-12. They have a chance to help reshape it. And, I think 10 years from now, this is going to look like one of the most significant moves in program history. And I talked about it in my piece yesterday in my column, but obviously there was a ton of focus on CSU anyways. It's been a really great week between the orange out, retiring John Mosley, honoring him. Now you have this massive exposure window with the showdown on campus, CBS primetime audience. Like, if you win this game this weekend, this is one of the best weeks in CSU football history. So it's been a lot of fun. I'm really anxious for this game. Like many of you, I'm eager to just have it play out one way or another. It's been a lot of talk, all the social media drama, people sharing stuff out of context. I understand that's part of the game these days, but I'm just ready to have them go out there and play it. Before we get to that interview with Jake Bennett, before we set the scene, I do have a couple of keys against the Buffs. Jacob in the Toyota chat wants to know, is there any update on Torrey/Newer? They were out at practice this week. We haven't gotten an official update from Norvell since Monday when Torrey was listed as probable. Newer is doubtful. I don't think either of those guys are going to be at 100% if they're able to go, but if you could get anything out of either of them, that would obviously be a huge win. In particular, Torrey. Newer would be huge because you need to get after the quarterback. It's actually my first key here against the Buffs. But Torrey is, he's the best player on the team. So, going into a matchup like this, you need that guy. You need your star power. 3 keys for CSU against the Buffs. A lot of these are pretty simple, but football is not as complicated as some of the people online try and make it out to be. Pressure the quarterback. Shedeur Sanders is incredibly gifted. He has a phenomenal arm. He's poised. When he has time to sit back there and pick you apart, as we saw at the end of the game last year, he's as good as anybody. That 2-minute drill, I have some questions about what CSU was doing defensively, not trying to pressure him, especially after getting home all night and just dropping back and basically letting him pick you apart. But if he can sit back there and even if you have, a bunch of DBs back there, if you're not getting in his face, he will pick you apart because he is very talented. Where he struggles is when you start getting hits on him, when you're able to start getting him second guess in the pocket, if you can get him on the run, trying to force some things. I think that's a big key for CSU. In particular, you got to try and get home a little bit without having to send extra defenders. If you're blitzing all the time, again, he's a really smart guy. He's probably going to find the open spot. You are going to mix in some pressure, but you really got to find ways to get home, with 4-man rushes, 5-man rushes at most. If you're having to send 6, 7 in order to get after him, probably going to be in a bad spot. And that's putting a lot of pressure on your corners with some receivers that are dang athletic in a really tough matchup. You got to run the ball effectively. That's my second key. I know a lot of people have been in their feelings a little bit about what the offense has looked like. I have said my piece about Texas. Northern Colorado, I was very surprised to see the reaction. You're running for 7+ yards a pop. You have to stick to that. There was no need to throw the ball 50+ times. You hit back-to-back big explosive pass plays to start. I hit the big play action shot to Goody when you needed to. Also created the opportunity for BFN to run untouched into the end zone because of the success you had on the ground. When you look at the games when they've been tight, when CU has struggled, it's been when other teams have, been able to kind of dictate the tone physically. I think a shootout, 50 type 48 game, how it was last year, probably favors CU. I think if you can dictate the tempo at times, you're still going to have to hit some explosive plays. You're going to have to open up the offense in a way we haven't quite seen yet. But I still think being able to lean on that ground game, particularly if you have a lead in the second half, if you're able to go, for 4 or 5 yards a carry, that's going to be huge. Finally, you got to win the turnover margin. You had 4 turnovers last year in a game that you still should have won and basically blew at the end and lost in double overtime. Some of those turnovers, a little bit misleading, 4th down plays. I'm not gonna rip a guy for throwing an interception on 4th down in double overtime. And again, when people fixate on those interception totals from BFN, I try to bring up that context does matter. At least 5 of them, if not 6 or 7, were fourth down plays, were Hail Mary type situations, still turn the ball over far too much. And obviously those turnovers were a big part of what allowed CU to hang around and ultimately win the game. That pick 6 to Sanders, that was huge. But his response was great. And I think we see them open up the offense. I think they get guys like Armani Winfield involved. I think they got to get the ball to Caleb Goody when they can, in particular on a deep shot if it's there. But Winfield, I think, needs to have a big game. I think they need to get him involved because we see it in practice. That guy is special, and I think he can be a legit 3-down type receiver, a star the way that Torrey is. We're going to play the interview with Jake Bennett, former CSU starting center, my good buddy. I was on that team that beat the Buffs in 2014. We talked about that, how big it was, being able to lean on the ground game. The O-line just dominated. People forget, they remember so much. D. Hart had a couple of touchdowns, went for 100-plus yards. Treyas Gerald went for over 100 yards and had a touchdown as well. The Rams ran it down their throat that day. And again, I think the time CSU has had the most success in these games historically, it's when they've had a strong ground game that they've been able to lean on. And I think it's going to be a big key again. Get ready for the season ahead with quality shades built to last. Our friends at Shady Rays have you covered with premium polarized shades that won't break the bank. Shady Rays, of course, they're an independent sunglasses company offering a world-class product that's rated 5 stars by over 300,000 people. They've got style for everybody. If you're looking for like a classic aviator, they've got it. If you're looking for like a cat eye glass, that you see so frequently, I've got like 3 or 4 pair of those. They've got it. They've got different colors. They've got different activity styles. They've got like the athletic type baseball glasses. If you want it, they've got it. And what's awesome is you can have the peace of mind knowing that they always have your back. If you happen to break them, they're going to replace them. No questions asked. They have the most flexible policy in all of this. Exclusively for our listeners, Shady Rays is giving out the best deal of the season. Head to shadyrays.com, use the code DNVR for 35% off of those polarized sunglasses. Try for yourself the shades rated 5 stars by over 300,000 people. I also want to talk to you about Toyota. For generations, trucks have been a part of Toyota's DNA. They built durable legends destined for greatness that are perfect for Colorado. Certainly see plenty of Toyotas up here in the Front Range. Whether you're conquering off-road trails or hauling the weight of the world, there's a truck that's right for you. The 2024 Tacoma and the 2024 Land Cruiser are sick. They've got 17 models with available all-wheel drive or four-wheel drive, like the Epic 4Runner. They also offer more low and zero-emission vehicles combined than any other automaker to give customers numerous choices to reduce their carbon footprint. With 16 different hybrid vehicles to choose from, like the Tundra iForce Max hybrid truck, not to be outdone, Toyota SUVs take command on the road and on the trail, so you can explore the road less traveled without sacrificing smooth city rides and SUVs like the RAV4 and Grand Highlander. Toyota is a proud partner of CSU Athletics and the official vehicle of DNVR. All right, we are going to play this interview with Jake Bennett. Appreciate him giving me some time. It was great to catch up with him. One of the true all-time great Rams. Guy that played his ass off. I think about what he was able to accomplish in his career. It means a lot to him. He's still around the program a lot. He's the OC at Fort Collins High School right now. Really good dude, really enjoyable interview. So here's that, about a 20-minute conversation or so with my good buddy, former CSU starting center, Jake Bennett. Stoked to have a good friend of mine, Jake Bennett, joining the DNVR Rams podcast. It's been a while. I had him as one of my very first guests. He's a big-time high school football coach now, coaching Mason Bandauer, very highly touted recruit. How's it going, man?
It's good, buddy. Yeah, go Lampkins. Repping my Lampkins after practice here, and it's good to see you. It's good to talk some Rams.
Do you feel like you're a mentor of the youth yet?
Oh, I hope not. But it is a lot of fun. Football being something I did for like 15 years of my life. When Matt Yim asked me to come back and coach over at Fort Collins, it's been a lot of fun to get back involved, and had a lot of really good kids. The whole program, whole school, there's a lot of good kids, so it's a lot of fun.
There's a couple of former Rams on the staff, right?
Yeah, we have Yem, myself, Dalton Fackrell, and my old college roommate Blake Nallen. Jack Grauberger but he just took the safeties job over at Mesa. So there's a lot of good dudes over there, not only Rams, but other dudes who had some football experience too. So
There's a lot of CSU connects on that Mesa staff too. I was stoked on it. I mean, obviously, personal connection for us to see that Fennell went back to Bear Creek though.
yeah, I went down there. They're playing Skyline last Thursday. My brother's coaching the O line. They squeaked out a 35-34 overtime win, so that was good to see. Old Tommy T doesn't change. Caught his halftime speech, and I mean, you could have plugged and played that into any time. I think he was there from 98 to 13, so you could have plugged and played that any time. So
I'm gonna go to the they're playing against Silver Creek up in Longmont in a couple weeks. I'm gonna go check that one out.
yeah, I mean, it's actually surprising. Coach had some eye back, just were pounding the rock a little bit. It wasn't absolutely slinging it all over the yard like the normal Fennell. So
I'm surprised. I guess a leopard can change his spots every now
yep,
and then.
yep.
Um, I wanted to get you on because I think you have a perfect perspective for this game as a Colorado kid, somebody who grew up watching it, and obviously I got to play in it. I'm curious, do you remember the 2012 game, our senior year of high school, McElwain's first win? Did you go to that game?
Yeah, I was sitting in the north. I was like right on our student section, right on the north end there, like right where it ends, going back towards the west side there. Me and my buddy Ben Pritchett were sitting there watching the game. It was a lot of fun because I
Did
think I
that
was
kind of reaffirm your belief in like what they were building at the time? Like this is, because obviously they were coming off like three straight 3 and 9 years. I know you had CSU roots, but I had to imagine that was at least validating.
yeah, because I think I was already committed at the time. And yeah, when they had the game there, they couldn't like host recruits because it was outside of like whatever the distance was. So just bought a ticket and went and hung out. It was a lot of fun. I think that may have been. I think I went to one after, and that was the maybe third one I ever really attended. So it was a lot.
247 claimed you were committed. I think it said you was like April 2012 or so, probably like right around the spring game.
It was the spring. It was at the spring game. So uh,
I, I
go
saw that 247 they had you as the number 12 prospect coming out in 2013. Do you take great pride in that?
yeah, I don't know who the poor bastards who were ranked after me, but no, like looking back on that, you put so much stock in like I gotta be better, gotta do. Then you get into college, it's like wow, that really didn't mean anything. And then not throwing any shade, but you see some guys who are maybe higher recruited guys who end up kind of fizzling out, and then you see guys like you know a Weston Richburg who's a 2-star out of middle of nowhere Texas who turns into maybe the best center to ever play at Colorado State. So it's like that stuff is it's good to try to achieve that, but at the same time it doesn't really mean much. So
That was a much more eloquent response than I expected. I was gonna come back with couldn't crack the top 10, huh? But you kind of you ruined that bit.
yeah, sorry about
I appreciate you, man. Your first start, I believe, 2014 was the win over CU in Denver. I think that was coming off the knee injury, right?
no, so this is my redshirt freshman year. I started these first 3 games that year, and then I got hurt that bye week before Boston College.
That's right. I man had the time wrong. But what do you remember about that 2014 game? I actually rewatched it recently, and funny enough, I was telling Joe Hansley this. I got a MIP in the parking lot before the game, so I was in a pretty bad mood for the first half. I'd kind of
Yeah,
blacked out that they kind of like they didn't dominate, but they were up like 10 points, and they went up 10 in the third quarter after that Grayson fumble. But then you guys just ran it down their freaking throats, man. Like I kind of forgot how dominant the O line in particular was.
yeah. I forget who I was talking about this the other day. I think after that game was the most sore after a game I've ever been in my life.
I
Because
believe it.
being like, it's your first game, you're so excited, you don't truly understand how to pace yourself. So it was like I was full bore every single play, no slowing down. And yeah, like you're saying, the second half we just started running power and more power and power. And Fred was pulling, Mason Myers was pulling. You got Sam Carlson, Nick Callender out there, and we were just really running the rock pretty well. So
What is that like as an offensive lineman to know like, oh, we've got the edge now, and to like be able to lean into that?
It's called taking somebody's soul, Justin.
Yeah,
uh,
I was never physically imposing enough to understand that feeling.
it is like it's exactly what you train to do as an offensive lineman. Like you might get 2-3 yards on plays initially in the first quarter, second quarter, and then they just slowly start turning into 3 or 4 or 5 yard runs, and then you get into the fourth quarter and you just stay the course and still just keep sticking them on them. And those turn into 12, 15, 20 yard runs. My favorite run in that game is where D Hart has an option to maybe juke somebody and maybe get another 10 yards, but he just barrels through like I think a safety or corner. I think it was on their sideline too, and just popped right up. I think it might be one of my favorite runs of all time that I blocked for. You know what I'm talking about? That play?
Yeah, I do. Yeah. He had a couple of those. His hit one of his touchdowns was pretty tough downhill running too. I loved his whole persona, like the swagger. There, I don't remember what it was. I think it was before the Boston College game. You know, you guys were getting all asked, like so lucky to play like the ACC school, and he came out with like we are the Colorado State Rams, sir. I was just like, that's my guy.
No, he was a hell of a teammate. I mean, obviously he was transferring from Alabama, so he's a stud. He's a great teammate, really smart football player. Like caught on to the offense like within the first week, and it was very fun to block for him. And then we also had old Sosa. So funny story. So Sosa, you remember Sosa number 3?
Yeah.
Um, everybody just called him Sosa, so I didn't know his like actual name. And after the game, I was interviewed. They're like, "How is it blocking for Treyas Geralds, and how did you think he did?" And I was like, "Who the hell? Who? Yeah, who the hell is that?" So that was pretty funny. But yeah, and then we scored going into our student section, like right in front of the cannon, and that was also a very fun touchdown to block for because you get the cannon like right in your face. You get the student section just absolutely going nuts. I think that was the one where there's a picture of D Hart. I think that might be
Just
the one
flexing.
Yeah, that was a really fun one. Yeah, it was just a really fun game. Just physically imposed ourselves. Um, yeah, Hollywood had a touchdown down there.
I think he sealed it. I think his was the fourth quarter one.
Yeah, if you look at that, I probably was downfield. I was probably illegally downfield on that play, but didn't
Hey,
call. Not a
it's all right.
penalty. Yeah,
No harm, no foul.
exactly.
Where does that moment stand in terms of like the all-time great games you were a part of? I mean, you got to be in some pretty cool ones between Oregon State, and I mean the finale of Hughes will always have a special place in my heart against New Mexico, but like I don't know, there was something about being in the stands that day and like coming off of the way you guys closed the 2013 season where it was just like, oh, this is for real. Like these guys have a swagger to them that's legitimate.
Oh, I was gonna power rank my games. Uh, in no specific order, that one falls into the top 5. Ending out Hughes, starting out Canvas are great ones. Redshirt sophomore year up in Laramie, winning that one was a good one.
You guys kicked their ass that day. Like it just that I went up there with my dad. That was dominant.
Yeah, we were really running the rock that day. That was a
Mhm.
lot of fun.
And they had Brian Hill, and he didn't do much of anything.
Yeah, and then they also had that defensive end who played for the Bills.
Oh yeah, he went to play for the Saints too.
You know who I'm talking about?
Yeah, I'm drawing a blank on his name, but I do
He's
know
a
who you're talking about.
Colorado guy, though, I believe.
Granderson?
Yeah, no, he was after him. Carl plays for the Saints right now.
Maybe I'm mixing two people up.
Yeah, I think you are. But that was a fun one. And then this is like a sleeper one that really didn't mean much at the time, but the end of the 2016 season against San Diego State,
You guys just went in there and thumped them.
that was like all the tumblers fell into place, and we like were executing at the highest level in Bobo's offense I'd ever been a part of.
That's what made the Potato Bowl so confusing to me. And I know the offense, like you guys still ripped it, and BC put up record. I mean, the whole offense. It wasn't. You guys were not the reason you lost that game, but I just meant like you guys came out and you were so dominant. And I know San Diego State didn't have like a ton to play for, but still, like I mean, you thoroughly beat down a really good team, and then I don't know. I know there's some human nature and like that wasn't the bowl that everybody wanted to be at, but it was weird because like I definitely thought you guys were gonna turn a corner there.
Yeah. Well, number one, the San Diego State game was a lot of fun because it had rained before, so it was like a just
I forgot about that.
like slushy, muddy, grassy, fun, and that was Qualcomm, and that was um, I don't know if that was the last time CSU played at Qualcomm. Do you know?
I believe no, they played one more time there in
It
2020. Yeah.
was fun going there because I mean that stadium had a lot of history to it, and it was like kind of old, dilapidated. But in that game, we were in the old Padres locker room, so it's like cool seeing the retro Padres colors, and then you got to walk 2 miles to go down a tunnel that's this wide. You got to duck as you come out. So I could only imagine how many guys have just about knocked themselves out going out of that. And then yeah, everything fell into place. And then yeah, the bowl game, it was like I don't think we should have played on that playing surface. I think that I don't
It's
understand.
crazy. There weren't any like serious injuries, to be honest.
I mean, you go back and watch that touchdown Izzy had and about ripped
It
to the
looks like he's on like frozen concrete or like it's like a Three Stooges skit or something.
yeah. So it was, if you're between the hashes, it was okay, and if you got outside the hash, it was bad. And then if you were on like any number, anything white, it was horrible because that was a different, like more compact because they had tarped it, snowed, melted, and then froze. So like anything white was an absolute just skating rink. Um,
I think they've moved. I don't think they've played a night game with that bowl since. I think it's now like a 1 p.m. game.
oh, good. So we just almost had to die for a good
Yeah, you had to sacrifice for
policy
the
change.
greater good.
Yeah, but yeah, I agree. I don't understand. It just didn't happen for us that day. So, but
I mean, yeah, I'm sorry. I'm not trying to bring up bad there were plenty more good memories between those 2016 and 2017 years, but
yeah,
it was just weird. Like there were a couple of those moments where it's like, a handful of things go different. I'm not telling you anything you don't know, but I think the entire Boba era is looked at different. I mean, if Colin Hill just doesn't get hurt, I think the whole thing's different. And Nick was great too. There's nothing against him at all.
yeah, I think we woefully underperformed in very critical situations. Like you have two 25-point leads against a Boise State team my senior year and lose at home. I mean, just
Yeah.
a colossal collapse. And then, I mean, we came out of that non-conference, and I think we were about like 3-0 or 4-0,
I think it was
and
4-0, and three of them were on the road.
yeah. So I mean, we were flipping along, and then just the bottom fell out. And then if we win that Boise game, we would have played in the Mountain
The
West
title
Champ.
game. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's just little detail stuff. It just never happened for us, and it still to this day frustrates the hell out of me. So
Do you think that can be sorry, do you think that can become systemic or like I don't know, I just mean like coaches change, players change, systems change, and it feels like there are like losing tendencies that can just kind of linger.
um,
And maybe
it
that's oversimplifying it.
yeah, no, I think there's there's a lot that goes into winning, but I think at the core of it is that you have to create a culture of, you know, this is how we do things, this is why we do things, and if you do not do these things, then you really won't be here or play. So, and I think a lot of the times, you know, you cater to certain folks because they are very good at what they do, but it hurts the team in the long run from just not having a standard. So, I think that was kind of our demise in the end as far as the Bobo era was concerned.
Yeah, I think I know exactly what you're talking about, but I don't want to stir up any drama with your old teammates. So
Yeah.
we'll keep it clear. But yes, I agree 100%. Coming back to see you, I know I got us completely sidetracked there, and I'm a master at doing that.
Yeah.
What does this rivalry mean to you? Like I mean, like you're from Colorado. You were part of those big moments where you win, and it means so much to like this community. But for you as somebody who's still in Fort Collins and part of it, and I mean, you proposed on the field, like
Yeah.
you're a Ram through and through.
Um, I think it's just like any rivalry game. You do not understand the magnitude of it until you lose the game. and then you feel the immense weight of like you're talking about being a person in the community, being a native guy, and then you hear about it for like a
A year
year or the rest
or
of my life.
worse. Yeah.
Yeah. So like any game like this, the YO, the Air Force game, any like trophy game for us, like these are games you think about for the rest of your life, as far as the ones you have, the ones you didn't have, and the how sweet it is when you are able to win it, and then how much it absolutely sucks when you can't.
Do you think
So
that'll be a fueling moment? I mean, just obviously they lost a true, just, I mean, you can't lose much more heartbreaking than they did last year. Like,
yeah,
is that a good thing or can that be distracting too? Like you get too focused on the past that you're not locked into the moment.
I think that just comes from leadership and being like more of an understanding of how like the magnitude of it and how much it means. I mean, they came out with an intensity that I haven't seen out of CSU in I don't even know how long, and it was an
I was
awesome game.
proud. Like, obviously, it sucked to lose, but I was the same way, and I talked about that on my show. Like,
Yeah,
obviously, they made mistakes. They had 4 turnovers. Like, some self-inflicted. They had a chance to step on the throat, and they didn't.
yeah,
But man, they were hitting. Like, they had a swagger that, like, it reminded me of 2014. It reminded me of watching Bradley Van Pelt in '02. Like
yeah,
fuck you, you're not special.
yeah. You got to go down there and burn the boats and say like, this is it. Drain the tank, finish everything you got, and if you win this one, it is very very sweet, and then you can go drink a beer out of the Centennial Cup.
What are you gonna do if the Rams pull this one out? Do you have a celebratory ritual? You gonna hit Lucky Joe's? What have you even thought about it?
Well, after they've extended the tailgating, I believe for an extra 2 hours beforehand, I don't know how coherent I will be if we do end up winning this thing. So, but
That's
yeah,
definitely fair.
there might be a coffee bomb and a Guinness in my future if that's the case.
Do you wish you could have played in an on-campus Rocky Mountain Showdown? I mean, it was a sweet atmosphere in Denver, and that's like what we grew up with. But
Yeah,
it was pretty electric in Boulder last year, and I expect an even more electric atmosphere with the first one in FOCO since '96.
yeah, yeah. I think it would be very cool. I guess I had never really thought of it, but yeah, it'd be awesome to have some home turf. I think the stadium is going to be maybe the most electric it's been since that Oregon State game when we kicked it off, maybe even more because it means a little bit more. Um, and I hope we just, show out. I was at the game last week, and in the past that student section fades a little bit, and I was very pleasantly surprised in the second half how
And it
many.
was a hot day too, and like they were in there a full hour before kickoff. It Norvell said after the game, he's like, it felt like big time college football, and it did.
Yeah, and they're just absolutely getting roasted by the sun on the east side there, and just to stand and like wait it out. I don't know what they're doing, but I love it because there's definitely a culture shift. Our days at Hughes, especially in those early years of mine, we used to talk about the rainbow, how it would touch one corner and the other corner, and by the start of the third quarter, it would just start doing this, and we could be up or down or losing or winning. It really did not matter. Out at Hughes, folks were getting their ass out of there in the second half.
I will say it was kind of a nightmare leaving Hughes because everybody had to go out onto Overland. So like there was traffic incentive involved, and they're wanting to get the party, but man, it was hot in those Hughes stands too. Like you talk about being sore after a game. I had some games where I was pretty miserable. I'm just watching you guys, not from the performance, just
all,
roasting.
all the beers and the sun really take it out of you, huh?
We can't all be peak athletes, but I try my part to raise the standard each and every week.
Standard is a standard.
Ram grit. That's what it's about, dude. This was a blast, man. I appreciate you giving me some time. I don't want to take up too much of your time. I know you got a lot going on, but um, honestly, I don't even know if I've ever even really told you this, but I owe a lot of like where I'm at to you very randomly. I went to the 2013 spring game in part because I knew you were committed, but obviously I was like a CSU guy and the game was in Denver and you were standing with Tim Skipper and I just walked up to like come talk to you and in classic, Justin fashion, I just rambled a bunch of shit about football to Tim Skipper, and he's like, who are you? What was that about?" And I'm like, like, what are you doing to fix up the secondary? Like, what are we doing here?
Yeah.
And they're like, yeah, like if you want a job, on campus, just show up. And day one, I just showed up, and I don't think they expected me to, but indirectly, I owe a lot to the Bennetts, and obviously I've worked baseball tournaments with your mom for 15 years, but I've got a lot of love for you guys, and I appreciate everything you've done for me.
Likewise, buddy. Rams helping Rams. I love it.
It's what it's all about, man. Have a good night.
Yeah, buddy. See ya.
Big shout out to the homie Jake Bennett. Really had a great time catching up with him. Seems like everybody in the Toyota chat are enjoying the interviews as well. Everybody keep it civil. I don't care if Buffs have nothing better than to do than sit here and watch me ramble for 45 minutes. But let's keep it somewhat civil. It's going to be a very hostile weekend. Certainly going to be a crazy atmosphere in Fort Collins. I cannot wait. We're going to give out some Mountain West picks before we get out of here, but on your mark, get set, eat. Make a pit stop at Raising Cane's for craveable hand-battered chicken fingers. They're always cooked to order and made just for you. Race in for those delicious chicken finger meals served up fast. Order up chicken finger meals, crispy crinkle-cut fries, buttery Texas toast, and don't forget the creamy coleslaw and secret cane sauce. Find your local Raising Cane's location or just order online or through the app. For cooked order, hand-battered chicken fingers, race into Raising Cane's, turbocharge your chicken fingers, and get them even faster by ordering online at raisingcanes.com or through their mobile app, Raising Cane's Chicken Fingers, one love. Also want to shout out our friends at Empire Today. Nobody does it quite like Empire. There are copycats out there, but they can't touch Empire, not on their service, not on their speed, not on their quality. So what they do is they advertise a bunch of low-quality junk that frankly Empire doesn't even offer in their catalog. What Empire filters out of the process is honestly just as important as what they keep in. They only want to give you the best of the best. Their philosophy is to help you find what you need. They're not trying to overwhelm you with thousands of choices like other places out there. They give you 8 million options of, but 7.9 million of them are just total junk. Empire's just going to lay it out for you, give you a couple of solid shots. Schedule a free in-home estimate today. You can use their virtual floor designer as well. It's a great way to see if a floor is going to look good in any space. All listeners can get a $350 discount when they use the promo code DNVR. Restrictions to apply. See empiretoday.com/DNVR for details. All right. We're not going to do power rankings this week. I didn't have a show with Dre just because of the chaos I was supposed to yesterday. Yesterday was supposed to be a full CU preview. Obviously, the Pac-12 news ended up taking precedent. It's been fun. If you missed it, go check out my piece, which gives you all the information you need to know on the move to the Pac-12 based on my conversation with CSU President Amy Parsons and Athletic Director John Weber. Always appreciate how great CSU is to me. When these big moments happen, they prioritize me and Kevin Lytle and some of the local media that make an effort to cover the Rams. And frankly, that wasn't necessarily always the case back in the day. So it means a lot to me. Before we get out of here, I am just going to pick against the spread for all of the Mountain West matchups. It's for fun more than anything else, but I do try and give you the best insight possible. We're going to start with a big-time game, one of the bigger games of the weekend for the league, and that's actually a Friday night matchup tonight. UNLV at Kansas. UNLV getting 9.5 points on the road. They have looked awesome to start the year. I was a little bit skeptical if they were going to be able to continue what they started last year, and they appear to be the real deal. They have not skipped a beat with Matthew Sluka, the FCS transfer. He's been nasty. He's got a little bit of quickness to him, has some of that dual threat ability, but he's slinging it as well. Kansas coming off of a loss. We'll see how they respond. But give me UNLV to cover that 9.5. And I might have to sprinkle the money line a little bit as well, just because I like this Rebels team. They're physical defensively. Jackson Woodard at linebacker is a stud. They've got a great secondary. They're great in the open field. They're good tacklers. They're just a really well-coached, solid team. And it's been pretty impressive to see what Barry Odom has been able to do over there. I will say, and I said this even last year, I thought Marcus Arroyo was pretty quick, or pretty close, I should say, to kind of breaking through there. And I think if they would have gave him one more season, I think he probably would have had some similar success. I mean, a lot of those guys that he's winning with are Arroyo guys, kind of similarly to the way that, McElwain came in and won with a bunch of Fairchild guys. Sometimes you just need somebody to make some minor tweaks, and the Rebels are rolling. I still fully expect them to end up in the Pac-12 at some point. They've just got to figure out that that legal mess of getting separated from the University of Nevada, unless I guess the league just decides to take both, but that'd be a little bit surprising to me. Nevada, speaking of which, one of the more frisky teams in the league, probably the most improved team in the conference. 17.5-point dogs at Minnesota. Oh, that's such a well sent line. I will say it does feel like the classic. Everybody's starting to buy into UNLV. Does attrition start to catch up here in week 3? I do wonder. But Brendan Lewis is playing good ball. You know, Lubick seems to be bringing the best out of him. It sounds so weird to say Lubick and be talking about anything other than CSU. But it's obviously an awesome story. Matt Lubick, you know, has leukemia. The fact that he's able to be back out there is just really inspiring. And I'm rooting for Nevada. Nevada absolutely hates CSU, and I get it because of how this whole Norvell situation played out. Even the Nevada media seem very petty about it. Outside of Shannon, she is awesome. She works for Nevada Sportsnet. But I saw some snarkiness, you know, even from the typical Nevada guys that always do. You know, I can't believe they're taking CSU to the Pac-12. Same guys that were shocked when Norvell left Nevada for CSU. I guess they don't understand that some of this stuff is a little bit complicated. Utah at Utah State, we got the Holy War. Utah State at home, 18.5-point dogs. Not sure if Cam Rising is going to play for Utah, which makes me pretty nervous about taking it. But I am going to take the Utes, which goes against every belief in me. I love to take home dogs, especially in rivalry games. Before we keep going here, we've got some questions about any chance Gatkuth plays, or is he out for sure? He's doubtful. So, I mean, there's a small chance that he technically was able to play. We did see him move around a little bit more than we had in previous weeks, but I do not anticipate that he will be out there. I think that would be a surprise. That said, maybe even if you could get 15 to 20 snaps out of him, you know, just some third down pass rushing situations, that'd be huge even, but we shall see. Again, I'm going to rock with Utah on the road, even though it makes me nervous. I just think that program is damn tough. And I think Utah State, I don't know. I've got some questions offensively. Kennesaw State going on the road at San Jose State. San Jose State, 18.5-point favorites. That's a big spread. They are coming off of the win over Air Force on the road. I'm going to take Kennesaw State to cover. I haven't bought into San Jose State quite yet. Wouldn't shock me if this is one I end up regretting, though. Hawaii on the road at Sam Houston. Hawaii 4-point dogs. Not only are we taking Hawaii to cover that spread, we're taking Hawaii outright to win the upset. We took them against UCLA. Did not happen. They unfortunately pissed it away. Classic Mountain West move when you're winning against a P4 conference. We saw Nevada do the same thing against SMU, CSU against CU last year. I mean, there's a million examples. But I'm taking Hawaii outright. I love that offense with Braden Shager. I believe in what they're building under Timmy Chang, and I think they already have 5 true upsets in the last 2 years. This is what Hawaii does. They go out and they pull off the unexpected. Love the Warriors to win this one, just barely. CU touchdown favorite coming into Fort Collins. I'm taking CSU to cover. I'm taking the Rams to win outright. I think the Rams are due. You know, obviously I'm a CSU guy. Am I biased? Without question. But I just like how CSU matches up in this one. I think it'll be a very similar game in terms of back and forth to the way it was last year. I think it'll be a little bit cleaner from both, you know, a little bit less mistakes than we saw on both sides last year. But I'm taking the Rams to win outright. So give me CSU. Baylor, 17-point favorites at home against Air Force. Give me the Bears. The Air Force looks rough right now. That said, Air Force very rarely gets blown out. So maybe they hang around if their defense can do their thing. Give me New Mexico to cover 28 at Auburn. The Lobos are frisky. That offense is great. I don't know if they can stop anyone. But Devin Dampier is electric. He is must-watch TV. And, you know, Auburn, they've lost a couple of these at home. And I mean, obviously they just lost to, was it Cal at home? But New Mexico State came into Auburn and beat them last year. There was somebody else 2 or 3 years before that. They struggle in these games. Like, Auburn is always up for Bama. They're always going to play a great game against Bama no matter what. For whatever reason, these smaller opponents seem to give them troubles. Give me the Lobos to cover 4 touchdowns. But I'm not going to be bold enough to say they go into SEC country and take that win the way we saw New Mexico State do a year ago. But I will say, I think the Lobos have the better quarterback in the matchup. And when you have the better quarterback, anything is possible. That's, you know, a big part of what New Mexico State was able to do. I'm drawing a Paiva, the Vanderbilt quarterback now, and Vandy looks legit. He's gone in there and he has not skipped a beat. We'll see. Devin Dampier at Auburn. I'm looking forward to watching that one. I'll record it. BYU at Wyoming. Wyoming 9.5-point home dogs, which is just, you never see that from Wyoming. Give me Wyoming to cover the 9.5 at home. I think this is their last chance to really get this thing rolling without the bottom kind of falling out. It's been a brutal start to the year. They've got plenty of experience, though. It's going to be a great atmosphere. Wyoming hates BYU the way they hate CSU, the way CSU hates CU or Wyoming, or CU hates CSU or Nebraska. It's one of the best rivalries in college football, and it's cool to see that game happen again. San Diego State, 17.5-point dogs at Cal. Give me Cal. Cal seems to have turned a corner, although that spread does have me a little bit cautious. Finally, New Mexico State, 19-point underdogs at Fresno State. Fresno State's looks solid, with Mikey Keene. They've had some moments here and there, but I just think the experience they have on both sides of the ball is going to be huge. So give me the Bulldogs to cover that 19-point spread. Shout out to all the Ram fans in the Toyota chat. Shout out to all the dorks from Boulder that tune into every word I say as well. I'm always proud to be, that this rivalry can get intense. I actually do have a lot of friends that are CU supporters, that are CU alum, but this current iteration of Buff Nation is just intolerable. And frankly, I would love nothing more than to see my alma mater finally shut you the hell up for the last time, to put the final nail in the coffin of this program, which appears to be the exact same team that it was a year ago. But based on the way that they're talked about, based on the way their supporters follow them, you wouldn't guess that. You'd think they're national championship contenders or something like that. Obviously, the Rams have not performed up to the task in this game for a long time, and it's put up or shut up time. If we lose this game, we'll have to sit here for the next half decade and listen to it. At the same time, if you find a way to win this one, we don't play again for 5 years. Those are some pretty significant bragging rights. First game in Fort Collins. This one means more. It just does. It has always been personal. It always will be personal. Proud to be. Go Rams. Beat CU. Peace.
We all silly like the mayor.